and was approved. Now comes out to 0.8% increase from the previous approval that the board gave us. You're asking the board to let us do.
Okay. A couple of things. One is, although I don't ascribe any ill motive to you coming back in, it's not a major revision from the original application. I just want to mention, especially because there are so many people here tonight that I see fairly regularly, that the village, the Board of Trustees, is considering putting into place a rule that if you make an application for the zoning, for a variance at the zoning board, there will not be permitted another application for a number of years. And they're kicking around 3 or 5 years. So you would be 2 years and 10 months too early, at least in this instance. But it doesn't apply to you. I just wanted to mention that this is something the village cares about. Also, the letter, the original letter that Ed Marin sent required variances into encroachment and FAR as well as coverage. And the new letter he sent dated September 8th recites the same 3 variances, but I spoke to him today, and there is no further consideration required variances for encroachment or FAR. It's just the coverage issue.
Yes, it's only coverage.
Okay. And finally, you may be the only fellow connected with this application who was not there the day I was. There were about 4 or 5 people mulling around the property thinking of things to do. And if you were there, I apologize. But the lady who owns the house represented to me at that point that with regard to the retaining walls, that the inner one, closest to the proposed garage, needed to be retained. The planter would be inside that, and they wanted to prevent rainwater, for example, from getting from the walkway down that slope into the garage. But that the exterior, or the farther away from the garage retaining wall, was unnecessary. And they were amending their application to eliminate that. Is that your position tonight? Were you aware of this?
Well, I always follow her wishes. Would the board allow me to do this tonight?
Well, we'll have to see. There's 4 very independent people sitting on either side of me here. I am disposed to grant your application. It's not a major revision. But having been there, it did seem to me on the spot that there was no need for 2 retaining walls. The retaining walls are causing the issue. And if the applicant represented to me, as she did, that she was willing to take away this outer retaining wall, and I couldn't distinguish between the people who were doing architecture and the people who were doing landscaping and the people who were doing the planning. There were a number of talented people there, but everybody thought that was a good idea to take away this retaining wall. And I'm subject to hearing from my colleagues. I'm disposed to make a motion to approve this with that retaining wall out. If that gives you any help.
That's her wishes, but we'll have to follow her wishes. But in the beginning, the second retaining wall was basically for aesthetic purposes.
You're not aware of this. You're looking like you didn't mention this to you.
No, they usually gather there until there's so many vendors. She has a decorator, she has landscape designer, she has general contractor, and they would meet and talk and that was not put on.
Okay. Well, I'm going to assume her representation is being followed through. And if you didn't know about it, certainly that's not your fault. I've said my piece pretty much. Does anyone else have questions or comments on the board?
This second wall, is it proposed?
They're both proposed. They've both been added since the original application.
Yes.
These 2. Right here. Right here. Yeah. I think there's that one that would be out, and that one goes in. It's a little shorter, seems to have need, where the other one, not so much.
Superfluous.
Right.
So Bruce, your suggestion is we act on the assumption that there's just one retaining wall?
Yes,
Yeah,
I
we
will go with that, yes, I'll agree with that.
That is my suggestion. Any other thoughts? Okay,
That would make it less coverage than what we,
exactly. Always a good thing.
Yep.
and we will revise the plans accordingly.
Okay, and I'll, assuming that people approve this, which it seems they're going to, the letter I send you permitting this will say as much.
Yes, sure.
Okay? Very good. I make a motion to approve the application as revised by the applicant to eliminate the longer of the two retaining walls. Do I have a second? We'll go up to the right, John.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
Yes.
thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next up is Shana Liebman on Cedar Lawn Road.
Yeah, thank you.
Good evening. My name is Sam Vieira. I'm the project architect, and we have been through the process with the planning board for the proposal and project that is before you, and they have granted its approval conditional on this board's review granting of variance. Specifically, what we're here for is that some time ago, the Silvers, who used to own the house, had extended the existing old stone patio at the rear of the house, basically in the area of the hash marks that you see on the drawings that I submitted to you. And not knowing that they needed a permit to do this, the work was actually done during a reconstruction or repair of a long stone retaining wall that separates this property from the downhill property. During excavation, they found that the bedrock was very close to the surface, and this whole area back here was all bedrock, and so the landscaper, Mason, suggested that maybe they just sort of even it all out and make it one flat surface. When I started this application originally with the planning board, the Silvers were the owners. Subsequently, the house was on the market and it sold. So what we did is we revised the application to Ms. Liebman, who is now the present owner. I am being retained, this is just for full disclosure, I'm being retained and I'm working for the Silvers, who are responsible for the resolution of this matter. So the sale went through, everybody understands, so the previous owners, who are my clients, are the ones who are responsible for resolving this, hopefully. The numbers and the calculations I put forth here, what was there, what was bedrock, and what has been added. And at the end of the day, we're requesting a 664 square foot variance above what is allowed for that zone.
What do the former owners and the present owners do if we tell you to take out the patio that was not approved?
The former owners will have to remove it.
And what does that do to the sale price of the property?
I'm not 100% sure if they have some sort of an agreement about. I just think that the existing owners simply did not want to incur any costs in the matter. Now, I will say that there is some stormwater management that we have to install here, and that will, any improvements necessary required by the planning board and the village engineer is at the cost of the previous owners. If this variance is not granted, then the 664 square foot additional, I'm not sure what shape or form that will be, but we are simply talking about square footage, that will be removed, and the bedrock will be exposed again, and it will be brought back to compliance.
Do you still have stormwater work to do, or is that?
Yes.
You do?
Right, so there's no sense in doing it if we were not successful with this board.
Okay, that makes sense to me. You mentioned that you're 600 some feet over, and I think that's true if you count what you call the side entrance patio, the old patio, and the patio extension.
Correct.
But you've been approved for, according to your numbers, all the 275 square feet. That's really what you're seeking an approval or a variance for tonight, right?
Right. So this house had a major addition done back in uh, 06. So 11 years ago, there was a major addition done to the house. And that addition put it over the allowable coverage. So there was a variance necessary for the addition. So we were already over, and you're right, so the additional space is only 200, but
Okay.
the total variance. So the 664 is above what's allowed, it wasn't what was added.
Right. I mean, you're not in here tonight seeking 664 square feet. You've gotten more than half of that from a prior variance grant.
Right, the increase is only 221.
All right, now, look at that page you have up there. I think it's what we're talking about is the 275.
275, correct.
But if you look on that page, the new stone patio is identified on the right side with an arrow towards something called a new stone patio as 142 square feet of additional impervious area.
Impervious area.
Right. And then there's Old Rock in the same shaded area, and New Stone patio again to what I guess must be the south of the Old Rock.
Correct.
How do you get to the 275 square feet? What are we talking
That
about?
142 square feet was important for the planning board for what we were calculating our storm drainage for, because bedrock doesn't absorb. So that was more for that's why it was listed as impervious area.
Okay,
So that number was specifically to address the calculations for the stormwater management.
all right.
The chart, the coverage quantities that pertain to this application are listed here, and the patio extension was 275.9, so 200.
All right, let's do it another way. In the coverage quantity chart that you just pointed to,
Right.
okay, you have the side entrance patio of 138 square feet. Where's that?
Over here. on the
Okay,
side.
okay, good. And then the old patio is what you call in your chart the old stone patio, is that
Correct.
right?
That's correct.
Okay, and what you need to get approved tonight is everything that's in the
The hash marks.
The hash mark
Which is
area.
276 square feet.
okay, now what does Old Rock mean? In the middle, we have New Stone patio, New Stone patio, and then you have Old Rock.
Well, that's the rock outcrop in the bedrock that was visible. And the importance of delineating that is that when they covered it with masonry, they did not change the impervious surface. Again, it goes back to the requirements of the stormwater drainage. So if you put a patio over a lawn, you have to calculate the whole patio. But if you put a patio over what is bedrock, there was no absorption there. And that's why it was important to distinguish the different surfaces for the previous application to the planning board.
Can you point out where the rock, I mean, I see where it says New Old Rock, but where, how far is that?
There's a dash line here, and I'm sorry, this dash line is but it was basically in this area.
From there too.
And at this point, can you see the rock, or is it covered by patio?
It's covered.
And then there's a wall on the other side of the rock, in effect.
Correct.
Okay.
So is that something that we're not considering for coverage purposes?
Everything is being considered.
Okay.
Everything's
But it
being
wasn't
considered.
an impervious surface. That's the only difference.
Which surface?
The old rock.
This back end here where it saes the new stone patio towards the
It was
rear.
impervious surface.
Okay,
Right.
Right.
Okay.
That was what was basically lawn, but there was like 6 to 8 inches of earth there because the bedrock's really high and then it slopes down.
Okay.
We had to show those numbers because the planning board considers other calculations and engineering beyond that. So the numbers in this and the coverage quantities specifically are the ones that pertain to tonight's meeting and your ruling, which is that they, without approvals, added 276 square feet of patio.
Okay. And part of that was this surface that,
Right.
yeah, okay, got it, thank you.
I mean, what they were trying to achieve was a little bit more of a usable backyard.
Yep.
Because it was hilly and rough and they couldn't plant anything. So, and so that's what brings us here.
Okay. Thank you, that's pretty clear. Comments, questions from the board?
Just one thing, amongst the papers in the application, Mr. Hahn, the engineer, quote, reviewed the plans and in the memorandum dated July 10th, 2017, listed 2 items to be addressed in the revised drawings. And generally, the papers we get indicate that the planning board has been satisfied with the recommendations that he has made. Could you address?
Yeah, there was one where they wanted see, that was a boilerplate. They want a maintenance schedule of how to maintain this sort of curtain drain.
Yes.
And that is not sort of like a standard. Normally what you have is a manhole cover and Coltex and so forth. And there are like very specific guidelines on how you maintain it, basically, lift up the cover, clean it. And so we have to address how exactly that's going to be done. My assumption is basically to keep it clear of leaks and so forth and so on. But that was something that we were told could be addressed when we submitted for the actual building permit to do it. So one was the maintenance note, and one was they wanted some delineation about the different surfaces that we were just talking about to show up a little clearer on the drawings.
So these have been or are being?
Yes. A permit will not be issued without those, but they were 2 minor housekeeping. Yeah, they were satisfied generally with the proposal, which is why we have the recommendation to come to you.
Okay, in that, planning board decision in July, they refer to a site development plan reflected in the drawing entitled Expansion of Rear Stone Patio. I don't see that in the paper. Maybe you just missed it, or is that the same document?
This is the same document.
Okay.
This is exactly what was presented
Okay.
and approved, and the 2 comments that Mr. Willoughby referred to were based on this.
Okay. All right. Other comments or questions? So I visited this property, and the numbers are not happy numbers in terms of coverage. But I must say, my impression was that the way the patio appears, it looks as though it's one, not entity, but one development on that piece of property. At this point, with it being the way it is, it would probably look strange to take away part of the patio. And if indeed there's only a couple of inches or 2 inches of grass and dirt there, who knows how well those would develop anyway. It would probably just turn out to be mud. So my inclination is to move, and I will so move, that the application be granted. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, we'll vote from the left, Kevin?
I agree.
Yes.
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 Thank you.
Thank you all. Good night.
Thank you, everybody. All right, next up is Steinberg's on Hughesville Lane.
This is a record for 270 square feet.
Yeah, thank you.
Hi.
Hi, I'm Jim Anacarico with Garnet Engineering, representing Steinberg's on this matter. We are here before you for a coverage variance, building coverage variance. We are proposing a 221 square foot spa pavilion in the rear yard, shown here with the red striping. We are also proposing existing stone or flagstone patio to the entrance to the pavilion, and a small fire pit, it's about 10 or 12 square feet, and a bluestone seating area or bench, if you will. When we were before the planning board for three meetings, didn't necessarily need to be there for three meetings, just two, but the notification requirements from your board, we couldn't meet them during the summer for the last month, so planning board just asked us to come back time, kind of go over it again. When we were originally there, we had some increased coverage, or some additional coverage. They asked us to try to reduce it a bit, which we did. I believe we reduced it by 144 square feet from the original proposal. Originally, we proposed this bench out along the edge, so it would have counted as additional coverage. But what we did was we moved it into the patio, so it wouldn't count as additional. We ended up reworking this walkway a little bit to reduce that, and reduced it by 144 square feet. We also had, I believe, there was some impervious area at the foot of the bench around the fire pit. So this lot approved by the planning board back in 2009. Once it was constructed and built out, and Steinberg moved in about 2012. Back then, we believed that the lot met the coverage requirements because the stone walls did not count as coverage, so that's the way we understood it.
Back then, when?
Back in
What date are you referring to?
2012, or or 2009, when the application for the site plan was approved by the sub.
At that time, there was no counting of stone walls as coverage. Okay. And when did your clients buy the property?
It was.
We started construction, started construction December of 11, moved in December of 12.
Okay, so I think they passed this rule right in the middle of that time period. I think that's right. Did you build the walls?
We did not.
They were there already?
Yes.
This
I
one.
presume you're the owner.
Yes. I hope so. There is this brick wall over here right along the property line that technically is on the Steinberg's property. I believe that was part of the original house that the subdivision was created out of. So that ends up on that property against their coverage.
If I may, the impetus behind us creating this experience in the backyard of our house is we were intending to dig an in-ground pool, and because of the immense rock and underground surface there, it proved to be close to impossible to do. So I was trying to create some type of experience alternatively to the pool where I can kind of keep my kids at home and do something good for the family. So that's the purpose of why we're intending to do this.
I think you mentioned that in your letter. Thank you, though.
So that's where we are. I mean, we have a lot coverage chart over here, which shows the existing coverage, which is 4,423 square feet. We are proposing an additional 347 square feet for a total of 4,770. The allowable coverage in this zone, the IF zone, for this size lot, which is 31,410 square feet, is 3,885 square feet. So the variance that's required is 885, and that's what we're hoping that you will approve for us.
Yeah, as I get it, you're over, as you exist, 13.8%, and you would be moving that up to 22.8.
Right.
Okay. So, again, a preliminary matter, maybe a couple of them. One is the planning board decision that was in the documents talked about condition of receiving a variance for FAR. Am I correct that subsequently you reduced certain parts of the application so FAR is not an issue?
For some reason, we all thought that an FAR variance was required with this pavilion. I had the architect go back out, and he remeasured the house, and I confirmed it with Ed. He gave me all the numbers, and Ed changed the letter, I believe, to your board to confirm that we did not need the FAR variance.
Okay. Yeah, Ed told me that today. That's quite an unusual story. That guy ought to be a lawyer, not an architect. So. Okay. And the other thing was, I noticed in your letter, the spa pavilion will be 221 square feet, and the Bluestone walkway will be 116 square feet. Explain the walkway to me. How long, how wide?
It's about a 4-foot wide walkway. I don't have the exact length numbers with me now, but I would say it's maybe 27, 28 feet long. It goes from the opening here between the stone bench and the existing grill area, right? So that's the opening. That's the closest spot that we can exit the pavilion from and get to the pavilion.
And why is the pavilion there rather than closer to the house, which would require less walkway?
Well, I think we're close to the house here. There's really not much room to get. Again, you have the grill here, and there's not much room because you have this bump out. This is probably that's the exit from the rear of the house. You don't really have too much room to get to it. I think the other thing is just, aesthetically, the architect thought it was better sited here, as long as I'm sure that you guys discussed that with him. I think putting it up against the house just kind of cuts off access to around the side of the house from the rear here as well.
If it is 28 feet and to get to 116 square feet of bluestone, if it's 4 feet wide, it would have to be something like 28 feet, something 29 maybe. But, if you're 5 feet closer, then you take out 20 square feet, that's all. Is that not doable? There's a requirement in the code that we have to approve the least amount of variance possible. That's why I'm picking up.
I suppose we could reduce the width to 3 feet. That would certainly save
25%.
So,
Yeah.
That wouldn't be.
I don't want to make this unworkable, but,
I think, if I may, I think it would put us, the current patio right now is the patio, and then there's an L-shaped countertop. So an L going like this, which is literally a countertop, and then the L coming back towards the house, which is a built-in grill. If we were to move that 5 feet closer, you essentially would be putting that spa almost right on top of, if not closely connected to that L bench or countertop right here. We just wanted a bit of space in between.
you could eat more easily in your hot tub.
Yes, I agree with that.
Okay.
I think we could make that work though.
I'm really just asking the question because I have to ask the question, that's all. The last thing I had as a question or comment was you're right up against, not right up against, but you're Harriman Road right behind you.
Right.
And I think I saw in the application you intend to put additional coverage between the house and the spa in Harriman Road, is that right?
The planning board asked us to put some trees right on the end of the pavilion. Right, currently now there are all of these trees lined along the top of the retaining wall. This is also, I couldn't tell you exactly, but it's probably a good 30 feet higher than Harriman Road, the backyard, maybe even 40. So as you're driving up and down Harriman Road, you're really not seeing anything. You're not focused up on the hill.
When we built the house originally, the purpose of all of the shrubbery that we put that is now probably 8 to 10 feet high was just for that, to increase the privacy. So we've agreed to add additional landscaping to make it even more private. And as you know, Harriman, as you're going down towards Broadway, slopes at an angle like this, so.
You'll be glad to know, I'm sure, that your property, in fact, the entire development is not on the official zoning board map that they give us. So I encountered your wife waiting for your child to come home from school because I couldn't see the property at all. So from Harriman, it's not visible. What I did notice, though, is the house to the west, closest to you. No.
Your other
That side.
Uh,
That seemed to me to be one spot in the backyard which did not have complete coverage. There is some coverage there, isn't it? And I wondered if you would be willing to agree as a condition, if this were approved, to putting coverage in there as well. It's probably in your interest as a hot tub participant as well as theirs, in the next house.
Yeah, I think you're referring to this area right here.
Yeah, I know where it is. That's where the stone wall is. That's
Yeah, right,
part
yeah,
of
that's
the
stone
stone
wall.
house. We could do that. That house that you're talking about, there's a stone wall, and then that house is set back considerably from even that stone wall where we would put the vegetation, and the spa hot tub is at the far other end of where we are. But yes, we could.
That's the house that has the approach from Harriman, right? The driveway, you go the driveway from Harriman?
Yes.
It's hard to find. It's kind of weird.
Oh, yeah, that house.
Yeah.
From what we understand, that house was the original house that owned all of the property back to where Hugh Hill Lane was built, from what we understand.
Okay. Well, it may be they don't care, and it may be they don't have binoculars strong enough to take advantage of things. I think it's probably in both parties' interest to put coverage in there, especially if you're willing to do it. So, I visited the property, I stood where the spa would go. I'm sorry you don't have the bedrock situation for a pool. You probably have a more interesting application.
Yeah.
But things being what they are, it seems to me that this is it's a close application because of the numbers. And I give some points because the walls were there before you bought and the rule changed after you bought, before you moved in. We can't give too much credit to that because everybody uses that as an excuse nowadays. But to the extent it has an impact, it's favorable. So I'll move to approve the application with the condition that screening be provided on the west side to screen off the house that we've been discussing. Do I have a second? Second. Vote from the right?
I agree. To your point, Bruce, about the numbers, just looking at this and looking at the numbers, I was not happy. But when I went out there and looked at the reality, I felt more relaxed about it.
I had the same reaction.
Yeah.
Tom?
Yes.
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 Okay.
Thank you very much.
You bet.
Appreciate it.
Just send a letter saying yes with the coverage condition.
Thank you.
All right.
Yep.
So, did you just send that to me, or did you send it to everybody?
Didn't send it to everybody.
Okay. So, Mr. Malone recognized on the eve of the hearing that his application was flawed in many respects. And he had forgotten, or somebody putting this together, maybe John had forgotten to include a page which includes zoning analysis. So he thought that might be useful. So we pass out copies of that.
Sounds good.
I'm glad to hear that because thought I was missing something. I looked and looked and looked.
We have it's the print, it's of old, these things. I think dimensions of level.
Okay. All right. I certainly have not had a chance to, let me take a moment to look at this. Okay. Property analysis, that's the same.
That was already
Okay.
I just thought that would be helpful.
Yeah. Okay. I think we had as much time as I want to take, or you need some more? Go ahead. Okay, John? Yeah. Okay.
I just wanted to give, if it's inappropriate, if you guys need more time to review it, we can simply put it on to another meeting, if that makes more sense. Mine is perfectly happy. So we can start, and then if you think that you need to see this, I mean, I don't know if people have visited the site, given that the application.
I visited the site. The daughter was home and was very polite about letting me be outside without being attacked.
Which one?
I don't know.
You must have got a nice one.
Yeah. All 5 properties had dogs this time. It was quite a week. Anyway, why don't you go ahead? I think we're here and you're here, and let's hear what you have to say. And if we think we would put it off because we want to think about things, then we will.
Okay, so this project is for the expansion of a small house in the streets area. Just quickly, I wanted to show people just so that they're clear on the scale of the house that we're starting with. The house is a small 2-story house. It looks like it has a gable, but it's really a full 2-story with a living room with the entry right directly in the fireplace, so that it's a difficult room to furnish a dining room and kitchen. It's very compact. On the second floor, it has a nursery-sized bedroom and 2 large bedrooms. So the goal here is to expand the house as cost effectively as possible to provide 2 bedrooms plus a house, 3 bedroom for the family, and then expand the ground floor enough to provide additional power on the ground floor. So, just in terms of our approach, what we have tried to do is locate the addition that's associated with the house over the area that is existing coverage already. There's a porch, covered porch patio that is in the area of this addition to the side that's already in place. So that's where we focused our addition, and also in terms of the visual impact that the project would have. The existing house has a specific look about it. If you notice, It's actually has a stretching porch, almost, this is the porch that we're at, porch is very, very tight in terms of, it's more vertical. And what we tried to do is stay within the language of the house and just fill that area. And honestly, when we look at it as the completed house, the proportion of it, you see this is the dotted line is indicating the extent of the house, and we're really trying to complete this house. If you look on this street, on the tree streets, there are versions of this house that are at this size. So this, I don't know why this one was smaller, they must have different levels of version, but this is not an unusual scale for that street in terms of its layout. So then if we go back to the site plan, the issue of one of the first issues with the location is that it has two fronts. Which,
What number page are you looking at?
on the document plan 012. So the house is it's a corner lot on the corner of Oak and Station Road. So you see there's a front up front, this line there indicates the front and rear yard, and then there's another front yard and a side yard. So the buildable area of the lot, according to the current code, again, is a 5-foot wide strip in the center of the lot. The addition that we are proposing is, would require the variance because the condition, even though we're not increasing the setback encroachment on this side, we are making, the number is not increasing, the number is actually a little bit less.
It's more intrusion, but the same degree back.
But there isn't really a path forward to expand the house within this, 8-foot wide buildable area, and we've crossed that past the location of the house relative to the setbacks, really, especially on corner lots, which are special cases. So one of the things we've done here, when we did rebuild this little entry area, we made it shorter. So in the existing entry portico, which is saying on the volume of this house here, it's 18 inches deeper than what we're showing here. So we did try to reduce the encroachment slightly in an area where we could.
So in that same area, there's reference a couple of times to a porch.
That's what that is. If we look just quickly at the proposed elevation, it's this entry portico,
So you've got an entryway there now.
which is centered on the existing building here. It's similar, centered on the existing building. This is the entry to the house is moving to the right.
Okay. And the
And that porch would be wider?
It would be the same, basically the same width in that direction, but it would be
Right.
shallower. Slightly shallower to just reduce to the extent, we try to pass.
Right, as you said, okay.
Okay, and then there's a rear yard encroachment as well.
Right. And again, the rear yard encroachment, we're just taking the volume of the house and extending it. This rear yard encroachment already exists with the covered patio that's in place. So now that, again, we're trying to stay close to that footprint of the covered patio that's in it.
Okay, well, the rear, I mean, you actually, in the page you just gave us, the rear yard encroachment is reduced by 2 feet. How did that happen?
Rear yard encroachment.
From 29 to 27, 29 and change to 27 and change according to the chart.
Rear yard encroachment. Which, let me take a look at the chart. Are you on,
The one you gave us.
just now?
Yeah, there we go.
So, that's an expansion. What this actually is happening is even though the corner of the house is parallel, the 29 to property line here, the house must not be parallel to the property line. So instead of taking that number, we have to take this number here. I think this 29 that was indicated here was probably to the corner of the house as opposed to the corner of the patio.
So it'll be a little shorter to the proposed corner.
Right, because that,
Okay. Okay, so that takes care of the front and the back. Coverage.
So,
You're plus 70, which seems quite small for what you're proposing, but that's because you already have a patio out there?
right, there's already a deck in this location, and you know, there's a patio, covered patio with a cover. So that's why the increase is really just a few square feet. That has to do, again, with the width of the bedroom, trying to run a master bedroom that has enough room for a size bed and kitchen. So it's basically 1 foot is encroaching 1 foot past, I think the patio is the building.
So your real issue is FAR, isn't it?
Yeah.
And FAR just, you know, that's where the focus was on the neighborhood analysis. Just so you guys are clear on the way we produced the neighborhood analysis, for our own project, we calculated accurately, and if you know, we do our best with the attic, and we calculate the attic at 100% because we know that it's accessed by an attic. In general, for the rest of the houses, we calculated 50% because we don't know if there's a scuttle, we don't know if there's an interior stair, we can't determine that unless we get inside the house. So part of, I just said that as a preamble, I think sometimes our actual FAR might be low, and actually a lot, 400, 500 square feet.
This chart of yours says calculation for the attic has been at 100% for almost all these properties.
Oh, it has been?
Yeah.
That's correct in this case. But anyway, if it says that, we're going to take that as the case on this one. So if the attic has been calculated as 100%, I'll confirm that, but if it has, we'll have to take it as what it is.
I think you said that for every property here. And you calculated your own attic the same way, is that what you're saying?
This attic is calculated 100 because it's access best here.
All right.
So then that's so if we look at the FAR calculation in this case, you can see that there's a number of properties that are significantly higher than what we're proposing. The average of the FAR that we're seeing here is about 125% over level. The median for the sample that we took is also about 125% over. And we understand that 125% is higher than the number that you're typically looking for. So we just, given the requirement of the house and how small it is relative to the lot, we really can't figure out how to tighten up and get the addition that's workable. So if you look at that's why in the beginning I focused on the plan. There's not a lot of excess space in it. There's not multiple bathrooms. There's not large bedrooms. There's not, it's really just trying to get into a workable 3-bedroom house. That's what we're trying to do.
It's, I'm just looking at the presentation of the house now and the house as planned. It's pretty obvious, I'm sure it'll be a very attractive place, but it's pretty obvious that it's going to be somewhat of a mass. I mean, there really is quite an addition there. And I think that is, as I said before, I think that's your issue. I take your point if you run the numbers. I haven't rerun the numbers that you just recited. Your FAR, as proposed, would be 127. And the immediate properties near you, property B, which is right next to you, at 112. Property G, which is behind you, is 83. And property K, which is across the street, is 85. And those are the neighbors that are going to most immediately impact. So, there may be other houses farther away, otherwise in that Station Road area, which are higher. If your numbers are right, that's clearly the case, but the immediate neighbors don't have that degree of excess.
The B neighbor, which we weren't over the addition to that. I know that in that number we're using the actual FAR because we've done that project, and that one does not have an attic. That would add to that because the volume of this, which is Tony Hunt's house, would be similar, certainly not as large than what's being proposed over here in terms of the.
Right, but if you've got 112 in your chart, and you calculate the attic at 100%, that means her number's a lot smaller.
I think that can't be right for that property, because I know that one is accurate, so that note, I mean, I think what we need to do is, we'll review this, since you guys just said, and we'll make sure that that is accurate, because in my recollection, you know, when we have the accurate analysis for property that we've done, that number is accurate.
You don't change them.
We don't make a pretend number for that one.
Okay, good.
So I
Glad to hear
know
it.
that the relationship to that house would be similar, and then also if you look at, you know, some of the maps of the houses across the street that are, you know, in these two locations for this.
What are your letters?
R and T. And then also, you know, we didn't calculate the street on the stuff on the other side because it's a little bit of a different category of house, but certainly the mass of the house across is much larger. And G, I'm trying to understand why G is as low as it is. It's hard to understand why that is. Given the size of that. Maybe it's the lot size thing.
Is it G across Station Road?
Yeah.
The glances is?
No, it's farther up.
It's the,
Because the volume of that house, like if you thought of it less in terms of its FAR ratio to the lot, and more in terms of the volume of that house, the volume of this house relative to what we're proposing is certainly smaller. You know, that's an adjacent neighborhood.
Theirs is smaller.
No, I think the FAR would be smaller because the lot size might be bigger and that might be better, but in terms of the overall volume of the house, this is something about, in terms of neighborhood character, where we try to get to a situation that even if you have a substandard lot relative to the other houses, I think the goal of zoning often is to keep the character of the houses the same and not have a situation where you have a tiny house next to a larger house. That was at least, you know, the way it was written by having a face coverage.
But you're not substandard, you've got the 5,000 square feet required, right?
No, I think we have the full 5,000.
Yeah.
But this one, I think G is, there's got, G is about, it's a lot and a half.
He's got 7,400. Yeah. Okay. Questions or comments from board members?
I guess just a comment. I was actually there today. I don't think anybody was there. I knocked on the door, but I did walk around. It did occur to me that from the standpoint of the house on the east side, right now they kind of look through at the patio, and they're going to have less view now because there'll be a building there instead of an open patio. It doesn't change the numbers, but.
We did go around, I mean, I think we know, we're very close to all of our neighbors.
Yeah.
2 weeks ago, we went around, we visited all 6 or 7 of our immediately adjoining neighbors and showed them the plans. I think that we had no objections, including the Hunts. They've added on while we've been there.
Yeah, okay,
When
good.
I wasn't seeing them.
Good,
So
I
I think they've written letters, I believe.
I appreciate that information.
Yeah, we did speak with everybody.
We didn't get any letters either way. I mean,
Oh, is that right?
it's not that, sometimes you get letters saying yes or no. Most times people just appreciate the information and don't want to get involved. Frankly, that's what happens.
Well, we asked people to email to Sarah Paulson, or Lammer, sorry, Sarah Lammer.
She didn't send us anything.
No.
Oh.
If she got them, she didn't send.
Well, you know, we'll get, if we come back, we'll get hard copies of all the letters and we can submit them.
That's the one thing about these neighborhoods, you know, everybody's in favor of somebody doing it expansive
Sure,
because
of course.
you know it's gonna get into the record the next time.
Yeah.
But Station Road certainly doesn't hang together, I'll say that. Okay. In fairness, John, I think we ought to put this over because, you know, these are really judgment issues and you've got to take a look at the property from the point of view of the adjoining properties, maybe not 2 or 3 streets away, but at least immediately adjoining.
If we had more time, we could provide more analysis in terms of things like the actual volumes or estimated volumes of houses, so there's like a sense of another measure other than FAR, so that we could be clear.
What do you mean by volume? What do you think?
So at the FAR, the percentage FAR that you might be over is related to a lot size, and FAR can be skewed again, right? If you have someone that has a lot and a half and someone has a smaller lot, you would have something that said, you know, we have lots here that are 150% FAR and a lot of FAR. So we would
the volume of those two houses, someone in 86% of allowable area might be the same. And so in terms of when you're discussing like a negative impact on your character, because what we're supposed to be talking about here is what's the negative impact to the neighborhood, what's the negative impact. And if, you know, that's why I think sometimes it's better to look at volume than just the numbers, especially when we're getting into very, very small properties. This is also one of these cases where, you know, the difference between something being over the threshold of 120% and that might be something like 30 or 40 square feet. And that's another reason I would argue that, you know, to take a bigger picture in terms of what real negative impacts are associated with this, because again, I think there are houses of this scale in the neighborhood. There's houses that, you know, this house I don't think will be out of place. And I don't feel like it would be like a huge visual expansion of what the house is now. And I don't really see that, you know, suddenly being a wall because of the way that the house is designed and the overall scale of it. You know, this is a house with 8-foot 4 ceilings inside. It's not a giant house. No.
I think it's going to look a lot bigger, frankly, because you won't look through the patio. There'll be a house there. That doesn't mean I'm against it.
Right. The other thing we can provide, if there's concerns about visual impact, is we can provide renderings that sort of show what it would look on the site and how it would look relative to other houses. And see if that would help.
Okay, I mean, you've already got apparently an incorrect calculation for the attic of the house next door, and maybe for all of these.
If that's
Either,
not accurate, right.
You said you did it 100% for the attic, and you just said you didn't think you did, so there's a little inconsistency there.
Right.
So it's probably in your interest to try to clarify that.
Yeah.
Okay. Does anyone object to putting this off, John? I know you can't be here next time.
Right. No, I don't object.
Okay. Anyone else object? Okay, I think
I
that's
have
what we'll
full
do.
confidence in my colleague.
Well, put that in minutes. Okay.
Are there any, and then in terms of specific concerns we would address that, I heard something about potentially, so John is saying that isn't necessarily the same thing. I'm trying to think of other information we could bring that could help people look at it if there's any questions about it.
Yeah, I don't know. I suppose a rendering
Might help.
The other thing about size and scale on this property is just that we spent a lot of time and too much money at Home Depot 10 years ago buying trees for this property. There was nothing on the property when we bought it. And so we've got a lot of trees which are now really mature. And I think especially that corner of the lot is pretty heavily planted.
Which helps you.
Which I think would help
Yeah.
sort of mitigate the scale, especially from the outside.
No, I think that's a helpful fact. And one thing I want to look at some more too is the front porch. You're quite close to the street. I mean, you're already quite close to the street, and you're reducing that by a foot or two.
There are other strategies for the front porch, like the point of having one of those porches is to have rain coverage on the door. There, you could do it as a colonnade, as a columned porch, like what's there now. You can also do it as a bracketed. There are versions of those houses where there's two relatively small brackets, the cantilever brackets that make the masses that much smaller, and that's something we could look at if that's just on that side.
Well, the front porch is such that you're not using it really for anything except to go into the house, right? It doesn't look like you're not gonna sit out there.
Well, I
Are you?
sometimes sit out there.
Do you? Okay.
I'm in my rocking chair
Yeah.
with a drink and all my buddies.
Yeah. Okay. No, okay.
So-
You're not gonna have a hot tub there. or anything
With
like
the
that.
dog.
Fair enough.
Okay, so we'll see you in October.
Thank you.
Actually, we'll see you in see you in a second.
Except for that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, last up is the Bernsteins on Fargo Lane.
So, this project is for an addition of a swimming pool and also the associated fence. The current house
The two issues that we have in front of you are building coverage that's associated with the pool, and then also the location of the fence, which we are showing partially in the aqueduct buffer. So the first one, that coverage first.
Sure.
So that
Your choice, that makes sense to me.
I think, so again, what we've done is the existing property is overlaid due to hardscape and walls. I think in the past they were not considered hardscape. They haven't had as that they were documented, so there must have been some method by which they were produced. What our strategy has been for the pool, and when we approached the plan, was to reduce the existing hardscape as much as we could and limit it to the hardscape that would be required to have a table and a seating area, and then have the swimming pool also be a pool that is in lawn, so the coverage associated with the swimming pool is just the coping stone and the coping cover. The swimming pool is sized, it's a smaller pool, it's a 16 by 32, which is sort of the minimum that we do in these situations. And with those approaches, we've reduced the coverage from 140 over to 125. At the same time, the current hardscape did not have stormwater protection associated with it, so the potential impacts of the coverage are being further improved because we're installing a stormwater system that will control the amount that would be associated with the patio of the pool. In addition to that, as it would be the case with all the pools being screened, all the appropriate size. Do you have any questions on that cover side of it?
You have a before and after on that page you're looking at. Down below the coverage diagrams, the existing condition and proposed condition at the bottom. And the structure number is the same, no decks, patios and walks go down to 1,000 square feet, and the porch stays at 104, and the floor overhang stays at 9. We had a swimming pool of 480, although if it's 16 by 32, that's 512. So.
I think it must be smaller than that. I think this is accurate.
Okay. And then other retaining walls, you're down about 18. So you've lost 1,000 square feet by eliminating patios and walks.
Yes.
Okay. Now, comparing.
Also retaining walls, they reduced also.
Okay.
There's the diagonal portion of the retaining wall has also been closed.
Yeah, that's down to 20. If the retaining walls go from 301 to 283, which is down 18. Okay, so but that's to your benefit, but it's a pretty small number, so I'm not looking at that. But as I see the two diagrams, in the one on existing conditions, you've got a walk of 79.37 square feet, that remains. You've got a window well of 3.35 square feet. And then the patio goes from 1180 down to 612, which is 570 square feet roughly reduction. And yet your numbers are down 1,000. What's the other?
Oh, it's
500?
It's the walk.
Oh, this walk here, where I have an elimination sign.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're taking that out.
That's all coming out.
Okay,
Yeah. That's a big number.
okay. So the net coverage, if you get what you want, is going down 500 square feet. That's a good thing.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's what we're taking out.
Yeah. Question. I mean, we had another application for the hot tub earlier tonight, and they had a walkway 4 feet high, something, out to the pool. The way this is drawn, you're going to be walking over grass and mud out to the swimming pool?
It's actually a look and a style that's become more popular. I think a lot of it has been driven by stormwater control, but it's actually quite pretty. It's a nice condition. They're okay.
And not just missing a walkway?
No.
It's client driven, Bruce. It was what they wanted.
Are you saying you won't use their hot tub when you might use it?
They probably won't invite me. I shrink easily. Okay, but you're representing there'll be nothing between the house, the patio behind the house and the swimming pool.
Right.
So, now the fence. There's no fence there now, is there?
No,
There's no fence, but there is remnants of what was a split rail fence in the aqueduct buffer. I found some posts
Yeah,
over there. I mean, it's before our times.
no, we moved into the property in 2001, and we put a tremendous amount of screening on the aqueduct buffer. There was nothing really there when we moved in, and we did significant plantings on that, and we've always made a deliberate choice not to have a fence because we like the aesthetic view of looking down onto the aqueduct.
Why is there, I mean, there's a 30-foot buffer, right?
Yeah.
And where, I mean, where would the fence go?
The fence that we're,
I didn't see it on the drawings, that's why I'm asking, maybe I'm just wrong.
so on the site plan, the fence is shown here.
You're on what, 12?
Yes.
1, 2?
The fence is shown here.
I'm sorry. Okay, point that out, would you? This is
Right,
it
yeah,
up
yeah,
here?
yeah. That's right, yeah.
That's really a long way from the pool, why would you have it over there?
Well, part of why we're doing this is the fence, we're trying to have the fence be screened by some evergreen planting. As you visit the site, there's a point at which, right now, where the crest of the hill is there, and there's some existing planting, and it's sort of a natural location for this fence to be. And if we move it inside the buffer, it would be within lawn space, within existing lawn space, to plant, and I fence would have to lose a significant portion of what is the lawn space. And part of what you're trying to preserve with the pool is to have some lawn area around it and not have the fence.
Well, you,
May I ask what you heard on that?
yeah, give me a second.
Sorry.
Hold your thought. I mean, there's a lot of space between the end of the aqueduct buffer and the pool.
I think that would be something that I would urge people to look at on site, because it actually, in this drawing, this lot in general is a very narrow lot, and if you look on site, and if you imagine, the fence being outside of the buffer and the pool in the location that it is staked out, it really would reduce the usable space of the lot in the backyard significantly. And from our perspective, the visual impact of having this fence 10 feet into the aqueduct buffer versus where it is not a significant impact. At this location here where we have it, from the views out here, we're actually in a little bit of a better position in terms of buffering it. It's slightly lower on the ground. It could be buffered by some existing plants, whereas you move the fence up the hillside, it would become, visually potentially more apparent from afar. So from our perspective, what we're weighing is the impact of the reduction in the rear yard, the reduction of the usable space, versus the visual impact of the fence to the.
Part of the rear yard reduction problem is because you have the pool so far away from the house. If you had the pool next to the patio, you'd have a huge rear yard, even if the fence were legal.
I'm
Sure. Yeah, I'm not so sure that.
Well, I mean,
That's
in there,
Yeah, I think pulling, you're saying if the pool was closer and this fence could then move in,
Yeah.
you'd still,
you'd still have a very large backyard.
you could be behind the pool, But I think the issue of the fence being close to the pool, you could use this area back where the pool is, so it's wooded, and it's actually it's sort of a very loose wooded screen from the neighboring property. Like this, it's not very open back where the pool is. The pool is actually going in a more wooded area of the site, and this is the more sort of lawn usable part of the site. So I think also if you pulled it forward and put the fence here, you'd have sort of a pinch point, and the usable part of the rear yard, it would feel very trapped back there. Again,
You need the fence to have a pool.
You need the fence to have a pool.
And looking at the lesser alternatives that are available, I mean, we don't want to approve the fence required for the pool and just create a fence that's inside the aqueduct buffer, which the village cares about a lot. I mean, there are fences within the buffer, but I think they're all pre-existing.
No, there's a fence. We did do an analysis there. There's a fence for this new house that was just recently approved that is right on the property line. So it's basically 100% variance for
This one.
Yeah, that one, I remember.
The big
this.
one.
Yeah, the big one. The big house, the big house that was
Oh,
in
that
that.
one.
Well, that would be Sunnyside and.
Across from the old farm that they're trying to
Yes.
sell.
The old farm, remember, it was, really run down house.
Oh, yeah, it was falling down.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
yeah.
They put
So
in
you know,
that.
the fence
We
is-
went back and forth on that fence a lot. We spent a lot of time, several months on that
And our
fence.
understanding of the Aqueduct Buffer, if you read the language of it, it's not to say that there aren't fences allowed in this area. It's trying to indicate that they need to be properly screened. Like the language that's in that section of the code almost points to, you know, the structures, they need to be properly screened in terms of the vegetative screen, not, you know, it didn't seem like a prohibition in that sense.
And the issue, the decision we made on that, I remember on the large one, was that it didn't block the view, not so much that you couldn't have a fence.
Right.
But I'm not voting.
John, did you service on this?
Oh, yes, I do.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sheriff.
So, I mean, I brought up, and this came up in the planning board, and that's why I bring it up, but I did go back to the language of the code, and I do have it here. If you want to look at it.
Sure. What's your section?
It is, it's the first section of the aqueduct buffer, I'm not sure what that. It basically says, for existing lots, no building or part thereof shall be erected nearer than 30 feet to any boundary of the property on which the aqueduct, Croton Aqueduct, battery, is located, or such greater distance as may be prescribed, so it's 30 feet.
224-11A.
Right.
Thank you.
Any additional structures, so, you know, the first thing is about building additional structures or intrusions, and I think that comes into the category of that. The aqueduct buffer shall be permitted only by variance if on design board of appeal and conditioned upon planting of evergreen and deciduous plantings. No variance for the provision of this section may be granted unless the requirements of this particular section are satisfied. It's, and then it goes on to talk about plantings and landscaping. So it's making sort of a distinction about buildings in addition and other intrusions, and then when it talks about intrusions, it talks about having them properly screened planting. And again, what we tried to show here is, you know, the condition of the fences along this section, you know, and whenever there is a fence, including the pool fence that's associated with the house just to the north, is right on the property line. And we haven't asked to drop park fence at the property line. We're actually having it 20 feet back from the property line. And we're also, you know, screening it in such a way that we think that the visual impact will be limited.
What kind of fence are you looking to put there?
It's an ornamental metal fence, like one that would be black. You would see through it, you would have the.
First sections.
Yeah, identical to the one that's right next to the Pecano Plaza, right?
Right.
That's a joint.
Yeah. So the goal is to have it be invisible to the extent that we can, and at the same time not give up so much of the yard that it has this odd condition of the yard where it's sitting up on the hill instead of where it sort of should be in the active buffer. I mean, the degree to which the fence is screened, we are open to other thinking. The way that we're thinking of it is sort of, because there's high tree cover there, so we're thinking of it as semi-evergreen, deciduous and evergreen mix. So we're showing a mixture of hollies, which are evergreen all year round, and then viburnum and rhododendrons, which would be provide summer visual, and then the branches associated with that in winter would still, you know, soften the fence. The fence is supposed to be a bronze, is what we're showing, so it's sort of bark color.
Yeah, I mean, the language says it, as I read it, it shall not happen unless it can be permitted only by a variance obtained from us and conditioned upon the planting of evergreen and deciduous plantings. I've got to say, you know, the coverage numbers are high, but given the fact that they're lower than they are now, that is a plus for you, as you know. But the fence location, I'm just having trouble justifying in my mind. I can't quite picture the backyard the way you, I'm sure you're right, but I can't picture it the way you're describing it. I'm sorry, I cut you off before.
That's okay. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. So, a little background. When we moved into the property, it was very unusable. It's deep grade down.
Get back to me.
Backyard, right? And we have obtained the necessary improvements to make it a usable backyard. And about 2/3 of that back area is relatively flat, and then it drops off pretty dramatically down as you walk towards the aqueduct. So if you put the fence, and then when we improved the back, what we did was we did a tremendous amount of plantings along the aqueduct, as I just mentioned, and as well as behind, at the back of the house as well, on the border between my house and Mayor Flood's house. So
He's your backyard neighbor?
yes, by the way, I'll just note that he has a fence that goes right up on his property line that's right next door.
Which has been there forever.
With a pool. So, parenthetically, but when we did those plantings, the planting beds are fairly large with irregular cuts. So the amount of usable property that you were, I think, asking about earlier towards the back of the house and the side of the house is kind of reduced by the fact that we've done these improvements with the plantings. The other thing that I'd like to point out is the people who lived in the house before this beautiful addition in the back of the house, the sunroom. One of the things that really makes the house really so beautiful from our perspective is no matter where you sit downstairs, you're enveloped in green. And we have a sunroom that, actually 2 rooms, a sunroom and a room next to it. It's, when you're looking out towards the back of the house, is all windowed. To us, if you put that fence kind of where I think you're talking about it, right in the middle of the backyard, when we're sitting in those rooms, what we're staring at is kind of like a metal fence that divides the property right in half. And effectively, in addition to that, because it's the slope and the planting beds, it basically renders any of the property between the aqueduct and the fence in the middle of the property useless. And it's just a unnatural place to put a fence in my layman's
What
opinion.
What
is,
Andrew's talking about is the space, if you did put the fence in here 10 feet, this 10 feet from here to where the crest of the hill is, would just be a lost 10 feet
Yeah.
along that whole line.
the crest of the hill, I mean, there is a drop off, I remember that. Between the aqueduct and the crest, what's the distance?
20 feet. That's kind of where the.
Okay, so that's where you're saying 10 feet further in.
Right. That was our target, and again, this is also the location where Andrew, over time, has put the plantings. So there's mature plantings associated with the fence that can help buffer the fence in addition to the local grass.
And the mature plantings you're saying are at the 20-foot point.
Yeah.
I would put it in 2001.
Okay. Comments, questions? Have you saw it when I forgot?
No, I mean, I see, having seen the property, I do understand what you're saying. It's just really not supposed to touch that buffer if we can help it. That's what I'm struggling with.
Yeah, I don't want to just say no. And I'm not proposing to vote no tonight. I'm not proposing to vote tonight. But I've got to see this again if I'm going to be convinced that.
I mean, I think that would be great, and if there were adjustments that could be made to the fence line that would satisfy the board, we could schedule a meeting to meet out on site and sort of, we could have stuff staked out for you, and we could take a look at it. You know, that, we may not have it perfectly tuned up, but in our estimation, I have a feeling that, you know, for both the owner, having the fence 10 feet in would be awkward from the house, but I also feel having the fence 10 feet would be awkward from the aqueduct, because it would be outside the screened area. And it just, it's the place where we've located, we think is really the pocket where it should be. And then given that there are other examples, even new examples of similar fences dropped right at the property line, we were hoping that this impact would be de minimis related to other things that have been recently approved.
Okay, and the pool fence has to be how high?
For 5 feet and everything. state code only 4 feet, Irvington has a special.
We worry about our children more
Yes.
than other
Yeah.
people.
They're more athletic.
That's why I waited so long to pull it.
Yeah, until this year, I agree with you. Okay, unless there's a serious objection, I'm gonna move to adjourn this so we can go out there and see the property. If we can arrange a time to do it, you know, maybe not unanimously, but several of us together.
And I don't know if that would be better to do if we can, if, you know, some point in the weekend, if we could email Bruce and sort of give some.
Yeah, I've got meetings tomorrow, then I'm gone Thursday morning. I'll be back before the meeting in October, by several days.
We all can't go together anyway.
We just can't talk to each other. You go 2 by 2.
But we could do 2 by 2.
All right.
Numbers are,
Are
okay.
there concerns about the coverage that we need to address before the next meeting?
I'm gonna look at that again, but I mean, I appreciate the fact that you're taking out, as I said about 3 times, taking out that much.
Yeah, the buffer that's the bigger hurdle.
I hope your feet don't dirty the pool with all the mud and stuff.
And we'll have a pool, get dirty.
Okay,
Thank you
so
very
I
much.
move to adjourn this. Any objections?
Nope.
Thank you.
Thank you.